This is The Unstarving Musician. I am your host, Robonzo. This podcast features conversations with indie music artists and industry professionals and me, all intended to help independent music artists better understand the marketing, business, and creative processes that empower us to do more of what we love. Make music. The Unstarving Musician is made possible, by the way, through the generosity of listeners just like you. And there are many ways that you can support us, including joining the Unstarving Musician community, which is free. And you get a bunch of tips and insights by joining in your inbox. Unsubscribe at any time. You can also visit our resources page for deals with Unstarving Musician affiliate partners, including Amazon, Bandzoogle, and many more. Or you can pick up a copy of my book, The Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs. You can even become a producer sponsor of the show. Sounds pretty cool. It is. It's super cool. It's the ultimate way to support us. But all these ways are great. So to learn more about the many ways of offering your support, please visit our sponsor page at unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor. Welcome back to another episode. This one is all about me. I'm just kidding. It's a conversation with me and Ezra Vancil about my new song, On Top of the World, which drops January 8th, 2021. You'll be able to hear it on all the platforms digitalis at that time. Until then, you can hear it and even download it for free at Robonzo.com, my artist website, powered, of course, by Bandzoogle. This was put together as part of my promotional campaign for the song, or the promotional campaign I'm in the midst of putting together. The idea was to have a snippet of audio content, or some snippets based on 2 or more interviews that I lined up like this one, of me being interviewed, that is. But Ezra, because he's such a great songwriter and just a lovely human being, we were able to bounce between my new song and his experience as a seasoned songwriter and recording artist, which adds a lot to the conversation, I think. I must mention that I was using video for one of the first times in my podcast recording career with Zoom. And because it's a new element in my world of podcasting, I made the mistake of being a bit too far off from the microphone. So I compensated, but at times my voice may be a wee bit low, so my sincere apologies for that. So Ezra and I cover the following: the history of my songwriting, the process of songwriting, the leap from wanting to sing to actually writing and recording a song, making it publicly known that I was working on the recording and release of my own song for the sake of accountability, that publicly known part, for the sake of accountability, something that Ezra does as well. We also talk about brute forcing our way through certain aspects of writing and recording, the honesty of my song and me as a songwriter, like, for instance, my limited guitar vocabulary, my absence from the drums at the time I started recording, various technical challenges, etc. The influences that others hear in our music and in my song. We also chat about the hardest part of writing, or the writing process for me. It's something he asked me about. And the great question of, am I done yet? And I think that applies to anything creative, right? You're like, am I done yet? Is it good enough? Is it good enough? Am I done yet? And we also chat about the many things that keep us from moving forward with writing and recording our music, talking about everybody who writes or wants to write. The story of the players on my song, On Top of the World, and the video back at the beginning of the process. We talk about things that are changing, because I still haven't actually started shooting it, and so some things have changed. We don't talk about a lot of those changes, but I'll get into those probably in another episode. But you're going to kind of hear what was happening at the inception. We recorded this, when did we record this? I'm not sure, I don't have that date in front of me, but it was weeks ago, as I record this intro on the 15th of December. 2020 is almost done. And then, Ezra, I love this conversation because Ezra shares his relatable experiences and struggles, comparing them or contrasting them to my journey, which really makes for a nice conversation. So I hope you enjoy it. I know Ezra would hope for the same. Hopefully he enjoys it when he listens back. I think he will. Okay, Here is me and Ezra Vancil.
I find it interesting when I talk to someone that is like a drummer, someone that's sitting in back of the band a lot that steps forward. And one of the things that was when I first heard your song is surprising because I love how voices come out from a talking voice. It's always your singing voice surprised me. It doesn't fit your talking voice.
That's funny. I would say, for you, it's funny because you're one of those singers that I hear your talking voice when I hear you sing, but I know exactly what you're talking about because I've heard many a singer and go, wow, that's that person.
Yeah. It's always surprising to me because sometimes it fits and then sometimes you're like, wow, that voice comes out of. Where did you first start singing? Do you sing a part? I know you play and you play with bands. Were you always singing with the bands, or so has that been a part of your life, the singing part of it?
It has, but I only started really taking it seriously in more recent years, maybe like the last 10, and it feels like as I've gotten closer to the point of doing the song that I've been getting more and more serious about it because I've been trying to do it for decades, right? But I was always very nonchalant about it, and then as I started getting around people who were really good singers, I would try to pick up what I could, to learn from them. Never taking a voice lesson. I actually took my first lesson here recently because I did my demo, and I'm like, okay, I want to try and do better. So I called on a friend who's got a lot of great experiences she thought, man, I think you just, need a quick lesson for what you're trying to do. But so, yeah, it's been something I've really been focusing on more and more the last 5 years. But I have, to answer the question more directly, I've always sang behind the drum kit, and then there's been the occasional, there's a drummer around, let's, bring him up front for something.
Okay. Well, when's the first time that you dove into songwriting? Was that when you said, we talked at one point, you said when you're younger, you kind of touched on it. Tell us a little bit about that. And where did it start, your first songwriting experience?
My first and my most recent are so far apart, it's funny. I was still living in Texas, and I want to say it was maybe the 90s, early 90s, if not the 80s, and dating myself now, but I probably penned, I want to say 3. It might have only been 2 songs, and they got demoed, but they didn't get published or anything. And actually at that time I wrote lyrics, and I had some bandmates that were competent guitar players, and I worked on some arrangement stuff. And we went out and played that stuff a bit. I think the band might have been together 2 or 3 years, and that was that. And then I just kind of forgot about it. But I think that with the advent of the Unstarving Musician podcast and the book that spawned that idea, I started writing more and more and more. And then I started, since I've been in Panama, I met an expat from Canada who hosts writing workshops for people who want to write fiction at this really cool place called Tranquilo Retreat nearby. And so I attended some of those and really enjoyed them, and it made me think a lot about staying creative because for a blogger, for me, it was always easy to just run out of things to say, and it really, as the saying goes, it really just takes practice, right? So once I started getting in those workshops, this person who runs the workshops, her name is Linda Allison. She's really special to me, but she knows I'm a musician, and she knew I had aspirations to write a song. So whenever I was at her workshop, she just would always provide input about the work that I did there from the perspective of a songwriter. So she was subtly encouraging me. And like I mentioned to you before we started rolling, I picked the guitar back up. Maybe it's been a couple of years. I think it's probably been about a year that I picked it back up, and have the good fortune to be playing with some guys that are good musicians, so they'll sit down with me, and show me some things. And gosh, I just laugh. I laugh at all the tools that kids have now to learn an instrument that just did not exist when I was younger.
It feels like cheating, doesn't it?
It does. It has to be frustrating for people, who want to teach and that are teaching, but they're just laboring over this free content. But I know they get some students too. So yeah, I mean, it was January of this year when I came to the circle of writing again and wrote this song, and now I'm actually working on new ones too.
So when you came back to songwriting, that's interesting that it came through fiction, that you were inspired to go back to songwriting.
Yeah.
But do you find, because I write novels too, just for fun, I actually just enjoy the writing process. And I find that things feed upon each other. So I've actually painted. I'm not that great at it, but I find that if I go paint or I go work on a story, it inspires the part of me that is, that I'm a little bit better at songwriting.
Yeah.
But they feed on each other, Did you find that has your songwriting kind of kicked alive your fiction writing?
Yeah, and I'm not really pursuing writing fiction as much as I enjoy it. It just seems like such a monumental task to me. So I have a lot of admiration for people who do it. But I mean, at the same time, what I've been writing, I guess, might almost constitute what they call flash fiction, which I didn't know anything about. It's just these really, really micro stories, But I agree with you. The same is true for me, rather, that everything from, I got a lot of ideas from people I met through the podcast who I never, I haven't met most people through the podcast like I've actually met you and your wife. But when I talk to you people for the podcast, I feel like I've met you, and stories come out. And so when I went to those first workshops, there were some things that were inspired from conversations. And then, of course, those pieces of prose one of them worked itself into one of my songs. But outside of songwriting, the same is true when I'm, now I'm learning that much of what I do can cycle through these different parts of the podcasting community that is my world, because I've got these episodes, these topics we talk about. I share them with, email subscribers. I create a small video snippet from something that I said in the email, and then I have this other podcast that you may know about for small businesses that I'll often use some of the same content for because they're so parallel. So yes.
It's interesting that like you've actually done something. So I've been playing since I was a teenager, and of course when you're playing music, I meet a lot of musicians, and I've had lots of time with musicians. And I've met so many people that are maybe a drummer that's really good at the drums, but they desire, when you get to know them, to write songs, to be on, at the mic, or a bass player, or vice versa. And I can't tell you how many of them never have gone as far as you've gone. Now, I've met these people. They'll show me a song in their studio they're working on. A decade passes. Maybe another song that I never hear. I'm like, send me the recording. And you need to do that song or whatever, encourage them. But what do you think that is? Did you face any kind of maybe like a resistance in actually doing this? What was the resistance you faced in stepping out behind the drums, behind the podcast, and walking over with, writing the song and then pushing it all the way through production and release? Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, there's still resistance because I haven't run the final mile yet. There's still the task of release, but all the way there was. And you know what I did? I just heard somebody talking about this yesterday. I'm attending this great. It's funny. I'm attending this trying to. I've been so busy with these projects, side projects I'm working on that have nothing to do with music. I'm gonna have to try and watch replays, but I'm watching this conference put on by Teachable. Those guys that have the course course creation platform, and there was a speaker on there who was talking about this, and now I can't remember what he said, but I'll tell you that for me there was just I know what it was. He said that putting it out publicly that you're going to do something is one way of building accountability. And I had been putting this out publicly, a couple things. I'm going to put together this recording, setup. I'm going to put up this video studio setup, which I still haven't done, by the way, so I can do some stuff, be a drummer on Instagram kind of thing. That's a big thing, right? and I'm going to write a song. I'm writing a song. I'm going to record this thing. I'm putting it out on the podcast and on into my email list. And I'm actually in my email list says, well, here's the update on my song. And that was a nice push, I think. But, you know, I always say that what holds us back in life is inertia, right? We get comfortable in the inertia of whatever we're comfortable in. And it's just so easy to let it keep going that way. But, yeah, that was it. I think just accountability and, hey, man, you know, life's passing by. I don't have all day. I don't have that much time, man.
Yeah, I know. You know, and that's really neat. That's what I do. That's actually the same technique I've used for years. Is I actually book stuff. I'll talk about it. I'll get people expecting it. I'll even make artwork for something I haven't created yet. You know, this album series. I didn't even have the albums written, and I made the artwork and like put it out and said this new 3-album series I'm doing. That was all for me. Because like you're saying, I've got to have this incredible inertia to continue on, because the inertia of my natural inertia, and I think a lot of musicians, is to fiddle. I love I love all my gear. I love to play around in here, but to actually get the other band members to work it all through, that takes another part of my mind that's organizational, of finally completing the song, you know, where it's cohesive and I can show it to somebody. Get the drums, get the arrangement. That's all a part of my mind that I have to just start flight and fly through, you know. And that's the exact same way I do it. I just put it out there. I'll book stuff and force myself into embarrass myself to get it done.
Yeah, I'm in good company then, I guess. You know, It's funny. There's this very unsexy part of the creative process, you know, getting your way through to a finished piece of product, just one little thing like a song that you want to have a video for and some sort of actual release. There are all these components that are just like, you know, right now, for example, it's me trying to get up at anywhere between 5 and 5:30 in the morning when my, you know, not look at anything except the screen that I have some prose written on and start writing. And I know you've done that before yourself with improving your guitar skills. So yeah, there's just this part where you're I don't know, you're brute forcing your way through certain aspects that just have to happen in order to get to the end goal.
I think that's a very something that's overlooked when people are dreaming of this. Even a musician that's already learned an instrument, because I'll still forget that. Like I'm trying to pick up mandolin. You know, I play mandolin, but I want to be good at it. Yeah. Well, you know, I forget how hard it was to be good at the guitar and then to be good at songwriting. And I forget that there is some heavy lifting, and it's not, it's almost like this curve of just trudge. And then all of a sudden, one day, you know, as a musician or songwriter, that bam, something happens and you're at a new level. But there's hard work. What does your process look like? Like I get up in the mornings and do my songwriting. Like, do you have a regular visit with do you write on the guitar, or is it in the mornings, or?
Well, I'm at a funny place because, you know, if you listen closely to the trajectory of my musicianship here, my songwriting career, you know, there was a lot of years of not touching the guitar. So where I'm at right now is spending morning time to write some prose that'll eventually I'll have some frameworks for lyrics, right? And I booked time to spend with that Linda, who's I was going to say that writing mentor who doesn't know she's a writing mentor, with Linda to write with her. And then in the afternoons, you know, my goal has been, I haven't been great at this, but, you know, my goal has been to get the guitar back into my afternoons for a bit, because this is the really weird part for me. I'm a very marginal guitar player right now. It wasn't luckier, I guess, but, you know, if you listen to the song, it's got a decent progression, but in a way it does feel kind of lucky given my limited skill set there. So I have to spend some time over the coming months for new songs to develop, you know, a broader vocabulary. I may be collaborating with people, though, to get there, because I don't know if I told you, but a friend of mine who's still in the business is he's got a new label venture he's working on, and he heard my song when he heard it before it was completely done. He heard it when it was done. He goes, write an album. I'll put it out on my label deal I got going on. And so I thought about it, talked to him a little bit, and I'm like, well, what the hell? And my wife, of course, is like, well, you have to do it. So, I have all that ahead of me that I have to figure it out one way or another. I've got to either, I'm sure it'll be a combination of improving my guitar vocabulary and probably collaborating, because I've been thinking about that as I start to look at and listen to people a little differently than I used to.
Yeah, and Compose, you've done a few interviews with those guys from Compose, which is a great place to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, I just I'm releasing an episode tomorrow as we record this with the one guy that I've actually contributed tracks for one of his projects on Compose, and I haven't said this to him publicly, but I thought, he might be an interesting person to work with, on this album. hopefully comes to fruition. He might be an interesting person, but and you know how it is, like yourself, I've met a lot of musicians, and you start thinking about, maybe this guy can play some piano and maybe write a song with me or something. Yeah,
and that's one of the neat things about working with other people, is that, especially as a songwriter, is, and this might be what you're doing right now, working with somebody on Compose, is that you'll find that when I bring somebody else in, it influences how I write. Like, sure. For a year, I had a piano player. I'd never had a piano player in the band, but when we had one, my songs started changing that worked really well with piano players,
That's interesting.
So I guess if you bring an oboe player into the band, all of a sudden you'll start composing songs that have a great little section for an oboe solo or something. I'm making up. It just came off the top of my head.
No,
so
I know what you mean.
What do you so coming at it with a limited guitar vocabulary, what was this song, On Top of the World, what was it like? How did you structure this? Was this written lyrics first and then you came up with a melody, or did it kind of gel together at the same time?
I figured, the two biggest challenges would be, for me in my head, were going to be to execute a good vocal track, and the other one was to just come up with the melody, with the music. So I started with the melody and the music, and I had just been sitting down with the guitar, and I had this riff, going on while I was playing, and I had this idea in my head. It's so funny when I don't know if you've experienced this before. Like I said, I'm a young songwriter, so I'm like a baby. This is all new, but I'm thinking in my head, like, oh, this would be great. It has this sort of who's next kind of feel, and so, as I'm playing it, that's how I'm hearing it in my head. I don't think that's the way it's actually sounding. So I'd cobble together a demo, an acoustic guitar and vocal demo, and send it to this friend of mine in Arlington, Texas, not far from you. And I respect him a ton as a guitar player, and I know he does some engineering and production stuff, and he's got a nice rich history, good singer, everything. And I asked him to give it a listen, see if he liked it, and he's like, yeah, man, I dig it. And I'm like, I was hoping you'd play guitar on it. And so he asks me what I was looking for, what style was I shooting for, and I'm like, well, I got this kind of who's next vibe, in my head. And anyway, I worked with two other guys. He did a lot of instrumentation on it. He's doing all the guitars and little things you might hear in there. And then I got a bass player. I was going to use another guy in Arlington, but the timing didn't work out, so I used one of my other good friends from San Jose. And but you get this end result. So what I thought when as soon as I heard it with a guitar solo on it, not because of my vocals or the lyrics, I thought this song sounds a little Tom Petty, but I don't mind that, at all. And I also, by the way, I had this grand vision for these Keith. I had these.
Yeah.
Did you? Yeah. I had these grand visions for like a Keith Moon sort of attack on the drums, but here was another funny thing too. I just have not been playing that much, so I'm like, okay, this is pretty. I'm gonna do this, and it'll be nice, So I settled on what I played, but I was happy with it. And then I tell my bass player about my original. I kind of wanted this aggressive bass, and he actually did do that, I think. I was kind of hoping for something somewhere between John Entwistle and what is his name? De Leon. I forgot his first name, from STP. And so he sends me back what he's got, and then what's really funny is between the Tom Petty and what other people have said about it, I'm like, huh, really? Wow. I mean, I've heard everything from Rush, which I think comes from the bass line, to David Bowie. I'm not sure where that comes from, but it's a lot of fun, and it's funny.
His name is Steve Storm.
Steve Strom. Steve
Strom.
Strom, yeah.
So, yeah, I got that, what you just mentioned, the Tom Petty thing, Rush, which I thought was kind of from your vocals a little bit.
Okay, that's funny.
Also, the song structure has kind of a Rush kind of, the lyrical structure actually is what. But that's always interesting. That's fun too, because people just pick up all kinds of things. A lot of times, with me, it's not anybody I even listen to. But that's interesting that you hear that, and it's neat. That's part of the songwriter, the joy of songwriting, like you were talking about, where I do the same thing. If I get an idea, it might not directly go to a song or an artist specifically, but I'm hearing probably a production that is some other artist that I'm not identifying, but it's the same sort of thing. And that's where I get this, the entire thing is like, I want to create that.
Mm-hmm.
And then sometimes it is like, I can hear like a Tom Petty type thing, and I'm like, I want to not create exactly that, but I want to create what that makes me feel like, and so having that initial feeling driving through it. What did you, did you write the lyrics all out? It sounds like it all kind of happened as you were going, but did you have all the lyrics written out when you started writing it, or when you sent it off to your guitar player?
No, I'm sorry I probably didn't fully answer the last question, but so yeah, I put together the melody and the structure, really the entire structure of the song on the guitar. And the first demo I sent him, I'm trying to remember if it even had the lines in the chorus, but the very first demo I created that I shared with another friend had a verse, maybe two, and it had just me humming the melody of what I thought would be the chorus. And then I had this, prior to that, I'd gone to some prose I'd written and shaped that into verses. And at some point early on, the chorus came to me, and I don't, it's funny, all these influences I had in the back of my head. I sort of, for me, I recognized this quick rush, not rushes in the band, but like this quick rush to the chorus, and back to it again. And I thought, well, REM had a lot of success with that. It's coming naturally. I'll just do it, and the song will feel kind of short, and I know they had success with that, so I'll just go with that. It can't be bad, right? But the lyrics in total, though, came completely together after weeks. But for the most part, I would say they were, 90% done in the first, I don't know, maybe a few weeks, as I was, spending time here and there to get it recorded, the initial demo done.
What's the hardest part for you? The lyrics, the melody, the arrangement? Arrangement is what kills me. So what's like, ugh?
For this one, I mean, given that, I feel like there were a lot of challenges, but quite honestly, when I look back on it, it sort of just flowed. It wasn't really that hard, but I had challenges like the room that I recorded in did not look like a room I could record in, but I worked it out. I didn't have any of the recording gear. I worked that out with the obvious means. I was concerned about executing a decent vocal part. Certainly I couldn't have played the guitar on it, so that would have been the hardest part. And then maybe beyond all that, it was getting a drum track that I was happy with. I had to run it by some people and say, am I done? I feel like I can do it again. I could do it better, but is it good enough? And I got enough votes of confidence on it that leave it like it is. So those were the hard bits.
And that's a big question, because that's one of the hardest questions for creatives to answer is, am I done? Yeah. How did you know? Did you? It sounds like you kind of brought people in, but how did you know when things are like, this part's done, let's move on to this?
Yeah, well, you take the first inner circle feedback and the biased feedback, and then you start to seek feedback outside the circle to make sure, and you have to listen. I mean, I had to listen for that too. send some things out and pay really close attention to what some people say that you might not expect, them to say anything, I guess, either way. But does that answer the question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's always to get to the place of am I done for me is always different.
Oh, yeah.
I never can answer the question myself.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't know.
I think I was lucky on, other than the drum track. Well, the drum track and the vocal track, like, is it good enough? That was the biggest am I done. Those were the biggest am I done questions. But like the song in total, like, I think I knew the lyrics were what I wanted. I knew the melody was strong. And in the end, I knew the drum track was strong. I think as a young, figuratively young singer, that's the tough one, right?
Yeah. And it sounded really good, and technically sounds good. So I guess you worked out your recording issues in your room, because I don't hear anything to me that sounds amateur about the recording of the vocals or the singing. They sing great.
Well, thank you. I mean, I think it should be encouragement to anybody who might hear this, if they hear this in entirety, but to write music and don't let gear be a limit, because let me tell you, I have a cheap-ass guitar I recorded the demo on, and it did the trick. I'm using the same, stage mic I've sang on for years. I don't have a high-end studio mic here. My overheads are a couple of SM57s. My drum set's not a cheap drum set, but I don't have $1,000 snare drum. That was really bugging me. But,
the drums sound great. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I have two cymbals here. I thought I really need to get another cymbal. But my friend who was doing who did the guitar work and other instrumentation and was mixing, and he's done a lot of recording, and he was happy with what I sent him as far as the engineering of the drums, the sound of the drums. I even said something about the snare to him, and he said it sounds pretty damn good. So you don't have to have $1,000 snare or $2,000 overheads.
It can fall into my brother. I'm sure this is just a regular term, but gear acquisition syndrome.
Yeah.
And I think, as relating to that one of the first questions I asked you, is that a lot of that you have to see as resisting you actually doing it.
Sure.
Is like, oh, I should get a better snare before I do this, or I should get, a better guitar, or I need to, go work with a vocal coach longer. It's really about, like what you did, it's just pushing through, getting people involved, and all that stuff just happens. And it's neat because when you look back, so, you're new back into songwriting, but when you look back in years, you'll think the sound and the drums and everything shouldn't have been any other way, because it really kind of captures where you are. And then maybe next time your gear's a little bit better, but still it doesn't matter that much, but it'll capture where you are right then. And it'll have something to do with the feel of the song that when you look back at it, it's like, it had to be that way, Yeah. I've seen that for every song that I've done,
Yeah, totally. I actually thought of Jack White, who I don't know very well from the whole like fan perspective. I do like a lot of stuff he's recorded, and I've seen him in some interviews, and I don't remember which one it was, but I heard him say that, and I don't know if this was bullshit or really Jack White, but it was still kind of inspirational for me, knowing that I had these gear challenges here and the room challenges. And he was talking about some of the instruments he used for certain recordings, and maybe still does. Again, I don't know if this is for real, because the guy is a little out there. I don't know if he just says stuff for the sake of, right, saying it. But he said he really enjoyed struggling with instruments. Like, he kind of wanted them to be difficult to play and get right sometimes. Yeah. And I thought, just reminding myself of what Jack White had said, and it's like, okay, I got some challenges and a couple struggles here, but we can make it work. So.
Yeah, no, that is very interesting. It reminds me of I like Daniel Lanois, who's a producer and a singer-songwriter. He produced like Bob Dylan, U2, Peter Gabriel, all that. But he talked about, I think it was Bob Dylan's album Time Out of Mind. Mm-hmm. I read this somewhere, so it had to happen, that Bob Dylan actually got pissed at him after the album and isn't going to work with him anymore, I think. Anyways, so he did Oh Mercy in that one. But he recorded Bob Dylan and the band working it out, but didn't tell him.
Oh.
And in the end, when he finished up, he pulled those tracks in with him just fooling around in the control room.
Oh.
And which is some of the takes that made the actual album were them in the control room just fiddling around and trying stuff out. And because in the end it's about that mood and that spirit that you put in there. I'm sorry, I'm going off on all the stuff now.
No, I wish we could capture all artists that way, even if it's just like extra bonus content or whatever.
Right? Yeah, because you can produce things to death, and that's where that where do I stop thing is because you can produce the life out of it, and you can write the life out of it. Are you so you're writing regularly now? You're writing prose? Are you writing music also?
I'm working on a couple of writing projects at the moment, so I'm working on the second edition. This has been many months in the making too. It's another project I finally had to start putting it out publicly, but the second edition of the Unstarving Musician's Guide to Getting Paid Gigs. So that's kind of a rewrite, but it's taking a lot of new information that I gathered over the couple years that I've been doing the podcast from talking to people like you. And then I'm writing, I call it writing prose. So I worked on some stuff that I got, that I did at my last visit to Tranquilo Retreat here with Linda. And so I finished that fairly quickly. And then I thought, well, I'm going to do what she's taught me to do, and I'm going to go look for some writing prompts, and just see what I can come up with, because that's how my song kind of came about. And then sometimes with writing prompts, I think about you guys, those of you I've spoken with on the podcast, and that gives me like a story to create. So in a way, I am writing fiction, and then turning those into song. That's my intent. But at the same time, we get. I found myself writing about the current climate of life right now the other day, and also with the desire to write some like some romantic tunes. I was thinking about how to. Well, what I could best latch on to get something going. And so one of them I was working with was a past relationship that never really started. And certainly I have to write the greatest love song of all times at some point for my wife to outdo Maybe I'm Amazed by Paul McCartney. So
right. You do that. I'm still working on that myself. I've written her 3 albums now, and I'm not even close to the greatest love song,
Yeah.
That's very interesting how, pulling ideas for songs, it's such from when I was young, songwriting and music and all that stuff was real blurred between being a passion that I loved and an ambition, so I didn't consider it that much. I was always more concerned with getting stuff done and stuff. But now the stuff you're talking about is just the things that I love about it, because at some point it's just who you are. It sounds like you're going to work with Linda to write more and to be creative in that way, and bringing it back and allowing your imagination to find outlets and to come into this world, into stories. That's like the beauty of songwriting. That's the thing when we listen to, how to get gigs and how to get our album out on Spotify, we forget that this is a beautiful way to live your life. Do you find, is it meditative for you when you write in the mornings, or when you're songwriting? Is it something of that you look back at your day that you feel like you gained from? Basically I'm asking, do you feel like that too? Like when you're working on this stuff, is it something of a meditation, of something that even if nothing comes out of it, you've gained from this work and kind of allowing your own imagination to play into your life?
Well, Tranquilo Retreat it's what it sounds like. It was appropriately named. That's a pretty special place. So when I go there, it does feel a little meditative. There's a vibe there that is just, it's pretty incredible. It's kind of going to be the romantic story of my songwriting, I think. This place that these songs were born from. But when I'm up early writing, or this last Saturday, I think I was writing a little later in the day because I needed to do it. It was kind of on the it was the not so sexy part. It was on my schedule. I needed to do it. Sometimes that day I actually felt pretty good about it. I don't know. There's something gratifying when I do it in the mornings. I know I'm doing a good thing for myself. And I feel like I'm in a particularly creative period of my life. So I feel like I'm doing something good for myself to knock it out in the morning. Because, before I start draining my head by looking at emails and websites, that I'm working on or whatever, or even a podcast. I mean, the conversations I have for the podcast. So before I make it sound like those are draining, the conversations I have for the podcast are so energizing. They're so energizing. But there's the other part of it, all the production stuff. That's kind of a little mindless, but kind of draining. So if I waited till late to do the writing, it would be harder. So I feel good about doing the early sessions because I know I'm kind of being responsible for my own creative self.
Yeah, you're almost taking it by the horns because when I go through my day, anybody, we only have so much bandwidth. Yeah. And I don't know if I'll use it up by evening, but I do know I have it all when I first wake up. So, I can predict that I can do things creative. I can use that energy. And like you're saying, I can give that to myself first, to my life and to the things that matters. And then I can give what's left to everybody else. That sounds true.
It's a good point, though. And you have more to give when you do that.
Yeah. And also it inspires you, so you might have even more bandwidth and energy to give throughout the day. But I started songwriting in the mornings and rehearsing and all that because I found out I can never predict what's going to happen, even just to my energy as the day goes on. But I almost always know what I feel like when I wake up, Yeah,
so, I think unless you're a single person who's mastered the art of, keeping things at bay, going for it first at the early part of your day, whatever time of day that is a great idea.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great idea for all the reasons you just said.
But let me ask you about your band sounds fantastic. Who's the Chris Responte?
Yeah.
How do you say his name?
Responte, yeah.
Yeah. Guitars sounded wonderful on that production, the mix. How did you meet up with these guys? What is your band? You had mentioned at one point that, I don't know if they came down or just one of your bandmates came down and y'all did some house concerts before.
That was a different guy. That was Johnny Bergen. He's a fine blues player. And
how did you meet up with this band that was basically you worked online to record this whole thing?
Yeah, well, funny thing, Chris Responte and Steve Strom have never met or spoken with one another, to my knowledge.
Wow.
So I met Strom in the South San Francisco Bay. So Sammy and I were living in San Jose, in that area, or in San Jose proper during our 17 years in that area. And Steve Strom is actually he's kind of in the thread work of the Unstarving Musicians Guide, getting paid gigs, because when I tell the story of, being booked a year out, he was part of that story. He was one of the extras, if you will, but a very important one. We played in a couple of bands together and eventually started doing various little one-off things together with another couple guys that we know, sometimes as a trio. And he is so he was an introduction to me, actually. He was a guy who was subbing for a bass player, vocalist in a band that I had the drum chair for, and then we started doing all this other stuff. But he's one of those special musicians that lifts everyone else up around him. He's very encouraging. He's always very positive. He's got a great sense of humor, and he's like all those things are what I aspire to be as someone who I play as a bandmate and someone who's sharing a stage with me. He's one of those guys, and he's a stellar player, and great theory, great ear, all that. And then Chris, I think it's been 3 years now. Well, maybe in December. So I have this circle of friends from many years in Dallas, Fort Worth, who were in the Tarrant County area,
Mm-hmm.
mostly there in Arlington and Fort Worth, and one of them invited me down to play this. He was doing this kind of controlled jam for Christmas at this venue called Bronco Sports Bar, which is a pretty big live music venue for many years. And I went down there. They have Broncos has this beautiful stage, lighting back, just a great place to go see a live band. And so my friend who was orchestrating the jam, it was another Chris. He pulled together a lot of great musicians, some of whom I'd never met, some of whom I'd played with, and Chris Responti was one of them. I'd never met him before, but he was one of the standouts for me. My jaw kind of dropped when I heard him playing, and then I heard him sing. And so I started following him. A lot of the guys I knew before we left Arlington to move to California had known him for quite a while. We just never met. I think he was in Nashville for much of the time that I was fumbling around in the bar scene trying to, get gigs. He was off in Nashville, recording with some fine people. And that's where I met him. And he was my very first podcast interview.
Oh, wow.
I was so impressed with him. I was like, I'm trying to think of people I know that, I can do my very first ones with. And it was an almost disaster. I got at least 20 minutes into it, and I said, Chris, I'm so sorry, but we're not recording. So we had a good laugh, and we started over. And I haven't had him back on since, but hopefully he'll be on again sometime soon. But yeah, so I try to see him whenever we're in town, just go see him play. And we have hung out a little bit too. He's one of the guys that will come out to whenever we're in town. I'll try and scare some people up, as you've gotten some invitations too, to get together, have some beers or whatever we can do. And he's one of the guys that'll come out sometimes. And so
cool.
Yeah.
Well, good deal. Well, what's next? I know that the release is next, but beyond that, just the release, not just the release, but you have the album you've kind of talked about. How's this playing out in your head?
Well, so I was laughing inside my head because now I'm doing what feels like the songwriting process over because of all the creation that I'm responsible for is a video. And this will be another first.
Oh, the video. Yeah.
This will be another first. I say the song was a first because it really was all mine, right? But so there's a video, and then I have...
Stop right there real quick. Tell me about the video, because nowadays that's like super important for releasing a song. What are you going down? What are you facing with the video production?
Well, I know I'm acquainted with a pro videographer, photographer here in the area, a really nice guy who expressed interest when I asked about doing a video for me, and he showed me some music videos he'd done. I didn't know. I think I knew he'd done some. He's been recording a lot of live music because he's a venue owner. But so that excited me. And what I thought we might get into was he was going to help me create some of this, help me with the vision of it. And I realized, and no discredit to him, but I realized I kind of need to do this, I guess. Not because he's I don't want him to do it. I'd be all over it. But I think he's really busy with whatever he's got going on, including a business. And I don't know, maybe this wasn't, maybe that part of it really isn't his thing. I'm not sure. So I created a script for it. I want it to be, it's not going to be like a performance video. It's going to be a scripted thing. So I'm trying to be a little cinematic with it. But there'll only be two actors, myself and and a female who won't be in the same scene. So it'll be predominantly the female character in the video. And I'm just going to try and take the song through a little bit of story trajectory and make it visually interesting. So we're doing it here locally. I don't even have, I have one of probably a half a dozen locations sussed out. I think I just found my heroine. It looks like it. She's very excited. Never done anything like this before, but I said, don't worry. I think we can work. I think we can make you look good. So yeah, I hope, I don't know when we're going to start shooting, but it's kind of like the song now. I can feel it. I'm just trying to do a piece of it every day so we can get moving. And I've revised the script. This was funny because I have the script. I wasn't even sure how to ask people. Like, I'm putting together this music video. I'm looking for a female to play, this part. Would you be interested in seeing the script? Don't worry if it's not your thing. I don't want you to even give it a second thought. But so I thought, maybe this is the way, ask them if they'd be interested in seeing the script. And so I sent it out to a couple of people. One I haven't heard back from. I'm not sure why, but this other one was very excited, which told me, even though I gave her a draft that was incomplete, she spoke specifically to the script. And I'm like, okay, that's a good sign.
She actually looked at it.
Yeah, and she liked it. She was like, oh, yeah, I can envision this, so that was good feedback.
That's really neat. That's something, videos are a lot like, now I get them done. They're not something I so much enjoy doing as much as making the song. I get them done because I have to, but I try to make them fun for that reason. But they are something that I found over time and after doing a lot of them, that if you find the right people, they just want to be a part of something cool. And so, and you kind of just got to reach out to enough people to find people that become like your go-to crew, your go-to actors. I've done that so much, or they'll point you to people, and I find out it's just like a song or a recording, because people love making music. So of course, if you're going to do a recording, there's going to be all kinds of people that are like, yeah, let's make an album. It's the same way with video. Is if you're really the person that's pushing this through, you find people that are ready to jump on board.
I remember you kind of taught me this in one of our conversations for the podcast. I try to share that with a lot of people because I found it so interesting. I didn't really understand, when it became clear to me that you weren't paying a lot of people to do this, that just isn't in the budget, And I was so fascinated with how you put it all together. And when you explained this to me in more detail, I remembered it.
Yeah, and it's good to, I'll give you another tip is, if you go and you work for a day with somebody, take them out to dinner that night. If you're not paying them, take them out to dinner, or bring dinner, do something as simple as that makes it all the worth, because hopefully they're getting something out of it too, which is a cool video, So the video's next.
And I feel like I have the makings of about another 4 songs already, started. So I have to start thinking about the music for some of those really soon. And then, I'm trying to learn all this as much as I can for release. Thank you, by the way, for sharing all those nice tips that you did. And I have been doing, funny enough, I've been doing these, just like this week, phone surveys for the second edition of the book. And so I'm circling back to some of my podcast guest friends to talk to them they just have experience at things that I don't. And those are the things I know they have, and I want to share those with other people. And so one of my selfish questions in there is like, what's your current release strategy for a new song? So that was really, in 2 conversations I had today, it was amazing at what I learned. So
yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
And what's do you have a date on it yet, or are you still kind of?
No, I shouldn't I? I mean, I don't want the year to be passed before I get this video together and release it, right?
Yeah, you got to have a date. I said because I held off on a date for so long on mine, but I found you got to put the date on it because that date makes stuff happen.
Yeah.
That way you can move on to your album, your next project.
In a way, the video might be easier. Maybe, I don't know. With getting the song recorded, both of the guys I was working with, because they are as talented as they are, they have a lot of work coming at them. So I was in the queue a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And even my own stuff was in my own queue. It wasn't like I just drop whatever the hell I'm doing and go, try and sing a verse or whatever. It just, I got to schedule stuff, and I got other people demanding my time. So
I put a date on my album finally, and I realized I'm not putting a date on it because I couldn't get the music videos done. And so I finally just put a hard date, put it out there, actually pre-released it on Spotify. The only reason to force me into getting the music videos done.
Oh, it's a good idea.
And it's the same way, like people I'm in their queue, but still it pushes me to like push them or to find somebody else that can help,
Yeah.
Because it just goes on. Like you said, the inertia is just, I'll keep going down this little, easy route that the river's on right now instead of.
Yeah. And then there's that life happens thing, and which is what happened to one of my musician friends that I couldn't get on the album. Life was happening for him just some things that the timing wasn't good, and so you got to. I think you made an important point earlier. Is have a network of people because not everyone's available when you want them.
Yeah, and make sure they all understand that, so they understand. Hey, if it doesn't happen this time, that's cool. I'll be back. We can work on something else.
Yeah.
This has got to move on, and keep that relationship where everybody knows this river's rolling.
Yeah. Good advice.
So come on, or we'll catch you on the next loop.
Good advice.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say I don't want to keep you too much longer. We've been at it a little over an hour. I really appreciate all the time.
Yeah. I hope that there's something in there you can use.
For sure. I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting we would talk this long, and I'm not sad about that at all. I enjoyed it. But I was saying, gosh, we're talking about such great stuff. I think I have to make this a podcast episode.
You do that. I think I'm incapable of not talking long. That's why I'm hidden off in this room in here, because if somebody comes over, I was like, oh, it's over. I'm just out there talking for hours. So I have to hide away to get all my work done.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think we hit on some really great stuff, and I'm confident that I picked up a little snippet I needed or two for for content.
Yeah, I'm glad you got it, and I'm glad to help you. If there's anything else you need, just let me know. It's no big deal. Yeah, I just enjoy talking to you.
Thank you. Likewise. I look forward to seeing you next time I'm in town, whenever that is going to be.
Yeah. Well, give me a call, and if I might be in East Texas, or I might be up here, but
we'll plan it. I'll hopefully catch you.
Okay. Good to see you, man.
Take care. Give your family our love, man.
I will.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye.
This episode was powered by Bandzoogle, the easiest all-in-one professional website platform for musicians and bands. Two things that will help ensure you're in control of your music business and your fan-based community are a website and an email list. Bandzoogle can help you do both. Plus, a solid website makes you look legitimate. Serious musicians, singers, songwriters, composers, and performers know this to be true. If you don't yet have your own website, check out Bandzoogle. It was created by musicians for musicians. I use it and I love it. It's as easy to use gets, and you don't have to worry about plugin updates and security patches. Bandzoogle takes care of all that for you. The features and support are both incredible. See for yourself. Go to bandzoogle.com to start a 30-day free trial and use the promo code Robonzo to get 15% off your first year. Plans start at just $8.29 a month. That's bandzoogle.com, promo code Robonzo, ROBONZO, to start your free trial today. This episode was powered by Convertkit. I have been a Convertkit user since early 2016, and I really love it for the email marketing aspects of what I do. It's more than just an email marketing company, though. They are focused on landing pages, too, giving beginner creators everything they need to start building their email lists. Their new free plan allows creators to make unlimited landing pages and forms, and you can choose from multiple templates, personalize them with design, include an incentive email, create a thank you page, manage all your subscribers, and of course send broadcast emails. The support is great, and that is important to me. To learn how Convertkit can help you connect with your audience so that you can make a living doing work you love, go to unstarvingmusician.com/convert or the show notes for this episode. Did you know you can help other independent artists find this podcast by subscribing on Apple Podcast or wherever you are listening to your podcast these days? It really does help, so I hope you will consider it. And if you have feedback, please go to unstarvingmusician.com to get all my contact info. You can text me, call me, email me, leave a voice message right there on that page. Just go down to the bottom of the page and you'll find everything you need to know. I really would love to hear any of your comments, suggestions, questions, whatever you've got. And you can find links to just about everything talked about in this episode at unstarvingmusician.com/podcast. All right, I'm peacing out. Thank you for listening and sharing with your musician friends and fellow indie music bands. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.